Hola y bienvenidos a la sesión. Hoy vamos a repasar las unidades 1 a 6. Okay, first thing, pronunciation. The double L sound or ella in Spanish does not sound like it does in English. This is a common mistake. Okay, it does not sound like la, like Ella. It's ella. It sounds like a Y, yes sound. Ella, me llamo, te llamas. Okay, talking about el tiempo. ¿Qué tiempo hace? Or ¿qué hace el tiempo? Either way is acceptable to say what's the weather like. Okay, make sure you review the different phrases for the weather if you're uncertain. When talking about, let's say something is very hot, cold, or windy, you use mucho. You don't use muy. Even though muy means very, you use mucho. Okay, because it's like in Spanish you're actually saying it makes a lot of heat or it makes really cold. Okay, so use mucho when talking about weather. Okay, repaso de unidad 2. Subject pronouns. This is really important. You make sure you have these down. Okay, and this shouldn't throw you off too much because we have the same things in English and you can see the English word right next to all of these. Right? He, she, you, we, you guys informal, you guys formal. Make sure you understand this verb chart and how it works because we're going to use it for all verbs in Spanish. Okay, so you need to know what each of these subject pronouns mean. So yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ustedes. Okay, conjugation. This is a big thing in Spanish, right? It's the changes of the verb depending on who is talking. That's very important. You don't just use one conjugation for everything. We don't just say S for everything. Okay, it depends on who's talking. And remember, while there are a lot more in Spanish, there are conjugations in English just the same. Okay, so don't let that throw you off. We use them all the time in English. Here's some perfect examples. Eat or eats, depending on who's talking, right? I eat. She eats. Again, here with the verb to be in English, he is, you are, I am. Those are all conjugations. That's a different spelling or change of the verb depending on who is talking. Okay, I want you to really understand that because a lot of students tend to just want to use one conjugation in Spanish. You need to make sure you're using the right conjugation depending on who is talking, just like you would in English. You would never say I is in English, but I see that all the time in the Spanish. People write yo es. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. Okay, so make sure you're paying attention to who is speaking and use the appropriate conjugation. A lot of this has to just do with memorizing the conjugations of each verb. Okay, so first verb, ser. Huge important verb that we use all the time, right? Let's make sure we understand these conjugations since you will use them all the time. Soy. Soy only ever goes with yo. You would never use this with any other verb. Just like down here with es. You would never use es with nosotros or yo or tú. You only ever use es with these three subject pronouns. Él es, ella es, usted es. Okay, so soy, eres, somos, sois, son. Depending on your subject pronoun, the subject of the sentence, who is speaking or who it is about. Okay, so some ejemplos. We have yo soy de Arizona. Again, you'd only ever use soy with yo. Nosotros somos de Guatemala. Again, we're using the appropriate verb because we said nosotros. Tú eres de California. Ellos son de Texas. Ella es de Mexico. Okay, notice all of these conjugations match up perfectly with the subject pronoun that they belong to. Okay, talking about gustar. This is a little bit different type of a verb. It's called a reflexive verb. That's why in this case the conjugations actually are all the same, right? Gusta in every single one. What changes is the pronoun in front of it, depending on who we're talking. So if I like something, I'd say me gusta. Te gusta if you like it. If he, she, or you formal like it, le gusta. Nos gusta for we like. Os gusta and les gusta for they like. Okay, when you're giving emphasis, when talking about, oh, she really likes it or I really like it, these are the beginnings you put at the beginning of the phrase. So, a mí me gusta. To me, I really like. A ti te gusta. To you, you really like. Or a usted le gusta. To you, formal, you really like. A él or ella le gusta. A nosotros, and so on. Okay, one other important thing about gustar is it depends on the item we're talking about. So if we say we like something that is singular, such as the soup or la sopa, every conjugation is gusta. Okay, if the item we're talking about is plural, like los jugos, the juices, every single conjugation has an N. Okay, the reason for this is because, like I said, it's reflexive. So the verb actually, it doesn't just mean I like. It really means it pleases me. So the grapes please me, or the juices please me, or the soup pleases me. Okay, so it changes depending on the item. Just like in English, I switched between please or pleases depending on if it's singular or plural. You're going to do that same thing in Spanish. Remember, the hardest part with this is that it doesn't depend on who likes it. They like it, we like it. Those are plural. All that matters is that you use the right pronoun, nos or les. Right? If the person's plural, that doesn't change at all. It's the item you're talking about that changes it from gusta to gustan. Okay, make sure you match your adjectives in gender and number. All adjectives in gender and number. These are common mistakes, so make sure you're paying attention to this. Los chicos altos. Okay, so here's our adjective. It's matching it because it's masculine and plural. Again, here's la chica estudiosa, so it's matching it in singular and feminine. If this was a boy, we would say el chico estudioso, so it'd match it in masculine. Okay, here's a chart. You can see the difference here. El chico alto, la chica alta, so these are the singular, masculine versus feminine, and plural, masculine versus feminine. Articles also match the nouns in the same ways we just talked about. Okay, here's the one with the articles. So the articles come at the beginning before, right? The boy, the boys. The girl, the girls. So if it's plural, you're going to be adding an S. You pay attention to whether it's singular, plural, masculine, or feminine. And then here, this gives the indefinite articles. So a boy or some boys, a girl, and some girls. Make sure they match those endings. Notice how they're highlighted here for you. Some more examples. You can see the words highlighted where we're matching the article here and the adjectives in number and gender. El chico alto, los chicos altos. La chica baja, las chicas bajas. Okay, repaso de unidad 3, el horario, telling time. ¿A qué hora es? Okay, I have this A highlighted because that's what sets it apart from this question, ¿qué hora es? So this is asking at what time is it, and this is what time is it. So two different questions, two different ways you're going to answer it. A las or a la. You only use a la if you're talking about 1 o'clock. Okay, one way to think about that is 1 o'clock is singular. You're going to use a las for all the other times of the day, a las, because every other number isn't singular, right? It's plural. Dos, tres, cuatro, it's more than one. A la for 1 o'clock and a las for all the rest of the times. And that's only if you're saying it's at this time. If you're telling time, saying it is 5 o'clock or it is 7 o'clock, okay, you're using these. Es la for, again, if it's 1 o'clock, because it's singular. Es la una. For all other times, you're going to use son las. Every other time of the day, son las. Okay, de la mañana, de la tarde. Make sure you study your phrases on telling time. Let's look at some examples. Son las 2 de la tarde. Okay, so we have 2 o'clock here in the afternoon. And we're saying it is. It is 2 o'clock. So we're using the phrase son las, because we're using that phrase for any other time besides 1 o'clock. Here you can see it. If we're talking about it's 1 o'clock, es la una. Es la una. Every other time would use son las, and that's to say it is at that time. So this again is saying it's 7 o'clock at night. Son las 7 de la noche. Okay, now here is where we switched to telling what time something is at. That's when we use the a. La fiesta es a la una. La fiesta es a la una. In this case we use es because we're talking about the party. We're saying the party is. Okay, you could cover that up and just see a la una is at 1 o'clock. We're saying the party is at 1 o'clock. Now remember, notice up here, if we said es la una, that means it is 1 o'clock. When we say es a la una, that means it is at 1 o'clock. La clase es, so the class is at las 8:30, so 8 o'clock. So we've made las plural, las 8:30, is at las 8:30. The S is only here, don't let that confuse you, okay? The S is only here because we're talking about a class or the item or whatever is at 8:30. Okay, we could cover that up and just say a las 8:30, then we know we're saying it's at 8:30 in the morning. Tener, a very important verb you're going to use a lot. Again, it's an irregular type of verb, so you're just going to have to memorize the conjugations. Notice, again, the conjugations depending on the subject pronoun. Make sure you're using the appropriate conjugation depending on who's talking. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes I see is that people just start using TNA for everything. Okay, that's incorrect. You need to use it only if you're talking about he, she, or you formal. Otherwise, you're using the right conjugation for who you're talking about. Tener plus que means to have to do something. So when you use it, again, you're using the right conjugation for who's talking. Yo tengo, que, and then you put the infinitive there, to go to the store. We have, so tenemos que comprar comida. We have to buy, there's the infinitive, and the rest of the sentence. So tener que means to have to do something. Big mistake that we make is not using tener for age. I see a lot of times people want to say, just like you do in English, he is 40, and they'll use the word es. That is incorrect. You need to use tener when talking about age. So here's an example. ¿Cuántos años tienes? So you're also using it when you ask, right? How many years do you have? So how old are you is how we would say it in English, right? The direct translation would be, how many years do you have? So in response, you would say, I have 15 años. A lot of students are really good with remembering to use tengo for I have, but where they forget then to do it is when you're talking about somebody else. So ¿cuántos años tiene? Like, let's say, how many years does he have? Or how old is he or she? So you need to make sure you use it in the response. Ella tiene 8 años. So you don't say es. You don't say ella es 8 años. You say ella tiene 8 años. Make sure you use tener for age and use all the conjugations depending on who you're talking about. Tengo, tienes and tiene will be the ones you most commonly will use because that's like a singular person, right? I, you, he or she. Okay, talking about AR verb conjugation. So any verb ending in AR, if it's a regular verb, which most of them are, you're going to use these endings. You take off the AR at the end of the verb and replace it with these endings. O, as, a, amos, ais, an. So here is an action. We have the verb hablar. Take off the AR. We have hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan. So we took off the AR and replaced it with those endings. This is something you just want to memorize. It's just plain and simple how you conjugate the verbs. Remember, if you don't conjugate the verb and you just put the infinitive, oftentimes that is incorrect unless it's coming as like the second verb in a sentence, like tengo que hablar, I have to talk to somebody. Okay, if you're just saying I talk to, or I speak, or they talk, you must conjugate it. If you say yo hablar, that's incorrect. It doesn't really make sense and it hurts my ears. Okay, make sure you're conjugating it depending on who is talking. Okay, the verb estar, a very important verb, an irregular one, so you just have to memorize how it goes here. Right, this is when we're talking about location or how people feel, because how people feel is a temporary kind of thing. Yo estoy, tú estás, usted or él or ella está, nosotros estamos, vosotros estáis, ustedes están. So, ejemplos. He is bored. Él está aburrido. You use estar because it's a temporary thing. He's not always going to be bored. I am nervous. Estoy nervioso or nerviosa if you're a girl. They are busy. Ellos están ocupados. Again, notice how we conjugated depending on who is speaking. So we're matching up the subject pronouns with the conjugation correctly. The verb ir, another irregular one that you just have to memorize. You'll use a lot. Yo voy, tú vas, usted, él, ella va, nosotros vamos, vosotros vais, ustedes, ellos van. So to go to the store, you use ir plus a. So voy a, vas a, and so on. Repaso de unidad 5 is ER and IR verb conjugation. Here's the verb chart. They're going to share a lot of the same endings for the most part, except for these two right here. O, es, a, amos or imos, is or es, in. So let's see this in action. Here's an ER verb, right? We take off the ER and we add that ending instead. O, es, a, amos, es, en. So vendo, vendes, vende, vendemos, vendes, venden. An IR verb ending. So compartir, comparto, compartes, comparte, compartimos, compartís, comparten. Okay, repaso de unidad 6. Talking about possessives. Ella es mi prima. She is my cousin. If the item is singular, you use mi. If the item is plural, you'll use mis, adding that s on the end. If the item you're talking about that belongs to you is plural or singular. Okay, comparisons. If you want to say more than, we use más. Okay, mi abuelo es más artístico que su hermano. If you want to say as much as, we use tan como. Tus primos, again, notice how that's possessive and plural. Multiple cousins, tus. Notice the verb is also belonging to they or ellos, right? Son. Tus primos son tan cómicos como sus amigos. Your cousins are as funny as their friends. Okay, tips for the final exam. Study the vocabulary. This is a huge one. The entire test tests you on almost all of the vocabulary. I would spend a lot of time making sure you know the vocabulary very, very well. If you do, that test will be a lot easier for you. Study the adjective and description words especially. That's part of your vocabulary. Make sure you study all those words that have to do with descriptions like joven, viejo, trabajadora, cómico, and so on. All of those description words will definitely be on there. Use tener for age. Make sure you use tener whenever talking about age for anyone. And this is the biggest one. Make sure you're conjugating all the verbs when you need to, but especially make sure you're conjugating for who is speaking that subject. Just like we went over with every verb chart we looked at today, specifically talking about each change of the verb depending on that subject pronoun. Okay, here is your prueba para hoy for today. Message me the answers to get credit. Make sure it is 100% correct, every single one. I'm going to grade this harshly, so make sure you really pay attention. This is very important. These are all the common mistakes students make, and I want to make sure you know exactly what is correct in Spanish, and I want to make sure you get it correct.